Assyrian Neo-Aramaic, or Assyrian, is a northeastern Neo-Aramaic language spoken by an estimated 200,000 people throughout a large region stretching from the plain of Urmia in northwestern Iran to the Nineveh Plains, and the Erbil, Mosul, Kirkuk and Duhok regions in northern Iraq, together with the El-Hasakah region of northeastern Syria, and formerly parts of southeastern Turkey. In recent years, Assyrian Neo-Aramaic has spread throughout the Assyrian diaspora. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic is closely related to Chaldean Neo-Aramaic, both evolving from the same distinct Syriac dialect which evolved in Assyria between the 5th century BC and 1st century AD. There is also some Akkadian vocabulary and influence in the language. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic is written from right to left, and it uses the Mabnai version of the Syriac alphabet. Speakers of Assyrian Neo-Aramaic, Chaldean Neo-Aramaic and Toro-Yo are ethnic Assyrians and are descendants of the ancient Assyrian inhabitants of northern Mesopotamia. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic is the largest speaking Neo-Aramaic group, which follows Chaldean Neo-Aramaic and Toro-Yo. Despite the terms Chaldean Neo-Aramaic and Assyrian Neo-Aramaic indicating a separate religious identity, both languages and the native speakers originate from, and are indigenous to, the same Upper Mesopotamian region. Most speakers are members of the Assyrian Church of the East and the Ancient Church of the East. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic is, to a significant extent, mutually intelligible with Chaldean Neo-Aramaic and, to a moderate degree, with Senaya, Lishana Deni and Botan Neo-Aramaic. It is partially intelligible with Lishan Didan, Halaula and Lishan Adnoshan. Its mutual intelligibility with Toro-Yo is rather limited. History. Aramaic was the language of commerce, trade and communication and became the vernacular language of Assyria in classical antiquity. Aramaic writing has been found as far north as Hadrian's Wall in ancient Britain, in the form of inscriptions in Aramaic, made by Assyrian and Aramaean soldiers serving in the Roman legions in northern England during the 2nd century AD. The Syriac language had evolved from Imperial Aramaic, an Akkadian-infused dialect introduced as the lingua franca of Assyria and the Neo-Assyrian Empire by Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BC. The term Syrian, and thus its derivative Syriac, had originally been 9th century BC Indo-Anatolian and Greek corruptions of Assyria, and specifically meant only Assyria until the 3rd century BC, after which the Seleucid Greeks also applied the term to the Levant and its largely Aramaean and Phoenician inhabitants. Syriac began as an unwritten spoken dialect of Imperial Aramaic in Assyria northern Mesopotamia, an Akkadian-influenced version of the Old Aramaic language which was introduced as the lingua franca of the Neo-Assyrian Empire by Tiglath-Pileser III. The first evidence of such dialects emerged in Assyria, and began to influence the written Imperial Aramaic from the 5th century BC. After the conquest of Assyria, Syriac and other Aramaic dialects gradually lost their status as imperial languages but continued to flourish as lingua frankish alongside ancient Greek. By the 1st century AD, Akkadian was extinct, although some loaned vocabulary still survives in Assyrian Neo-Aramaic to this day. The Neo-Aramaic languages are ultimately descended from Old Aramaic, the lingua franca in the later phase of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, displacing the East Semitic Assyrian dialect of Akkadian. The Neo-Aramaic languages evolved from Middle Aramaic by the 13th century. Following the Achaemenid conquest of Assyria under Darius I, the Aramaic language was adopted as the vehicle for written communication between the different regions of the vast empire with its different peoples and languages. The Assyrian Empire resorted to a policy of deporting troublesome conquered peoples into the lands of Mesopotamia. By the 6th century, the indigenous and originally Akkadian-speaking Semites of Assyria and Babylonia spoke Akkadian-infused dialects of Eastern Aramaic, which still survive among the Assyrian people to this day. Consequently, during the Persian rule of Assyria, Aramaic gradually became the main language spoken by the Assyrians. Even before the empire fell, the Assyrians had made the language the lingua franca of its empire, capable of speaking both Akkadian and Aramaic. There is evidence that the adoption of Syriac, the language of the Assyrian people, was led by missionaries. Much literary effort was put into the production of an authoritative translation of the Bible into Syriac, the Peshitta. At the same time, Ephraim the Syrian was producing the most treasured collection of poetry and theology in the Syriac language. By the 3rd century AD, churches in Edessa began to use Syriac as the language of worship, and the language became the literary and liturgical language of many churches in the Fertile Crescent. Syriac was the lingua franca of the Middle East until 900 AD, when it was superseded by Arabic. The differences with the Assyrian Church of the East led to the bitter Nestorian schism in the Syriac-speaking world. As a result, Syriac developed distinctive Western and Eastern varieties. Although remaining a single language with a high level of comprehension between the varieties, the two employ distinctive variations in pronunciation and writing system, and, to a lesser degree, in vocabulary. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century, and the religiously motivated massacres of Assyrian Christians by Tamerlane further contributed to the rapid decline of the language. In many places outside of northern Mesopotamia, even in liturgy, it was replaced by Arabic. Instability throughout the Middle East over the past century has led to a worldwide diaspora of Assyrian Aramaic speakers, with many speakers now living abroad, such as in North America, Australia or in Europe. Despite this, the Assyrian homeland still has sizable Assyrian Aramaic-speaking communities, particularly Mosul, Erbil, Kirkuk, Dohuk and Hasakah. Script. The original Mesopotamian writing system was derived around 3600 BC from this method of keeping accounts. By the end of the 4th millennium BC, the Mesopotamians were using a triangular-shaped stylus pressed into soft clay to record numbers. Around 2700 BC, cuneiform began to represent syllables of spoken Sumerian. About that time, Mesopotamian cuneiform became a general-purpose writing system for logograms, syllables and numbers. This script was adapted to another Mesopotamian language, the East Semitic Akkadian, around 2600 BC. With the adoption of Aramaic as the lingua franca of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, Old Aramaic was also adapted to Mesopotamian cuneiform. The last cuneiform scripts in Akkadian discovered thus far date from the 1st century AD. The Syriac script is a writing system primarily used to write the Syriac language from the 1st century AD. It is one of the Semitic abjads directly descending from the Aramaic alphabet and shares similarities with the Phoenician, Hebrew, Arabic, and the traditional Mongolian alphabets. The alphabet consists of 22 letters, all of which are consonants. It is a cursive script where some, but not all, letters connect within a word. When Arabic began to be the dominant spoken language in the Fertile Crescent, texts were often written in Arabic with the Syriac script. Malayalam was also written with Syriac script and was called Suryani Malayalam. In the 1930s, following the state policy for minority languages of the Soviet Union, a Latin alphabet for Assyrian was developed and some material published. However, this innovation did not displace the Syriac script. The oldest and classical form of the alphabet is Estrangler, although Estrangler is no longer used as the main script for writing Syriac. It has received some revival since the 10th century. The Madnaya version formed as a form of shorthand developed from the Syriac alphabet and progressed further as handwriting patterns changed. The Madnaya version also possesses vowel markings to help foreigners learn and read Syriac. Other names for the script include Swadaya, conversational, often translated as contemporary, reflecting its use in writing modern Neo-Aramaic. 3 letters act as matrilectionize. Rather than being a consonant, they indicate a vowel. A lap, the first letter, represents a glottal stop, but it can also indicate a vowel at the beginning or the end of a word. The letter WAW is the consonant W, but can also represent the vowels O and U. Likewise, the letter YOD represents the consonant Y, but it also stands for the vowels I and E. In addition to foreign sounds, a marking system is used to distinguish Kusaya, hard letters, from Rukaka, soft letters. The letters Bet, Gamel, Dalet, Cap, P, and Tor, all plosives, are able to be spirantized into fricatives. The system involves placing a single dot underneath the letter to give its soft variant and a dot above the letter to give its hard variant. Phonology. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic has 22 consonants and 3 vowels. The consonantal phonemes are consonants. The pharyngeal, as heard in Iron, is a marginal phoneme that is generally upheld in formal or religious speech and in hymns. Among the majority of Assyrian speakers, Iron would be realized as diphthongs, a or e, and even, depending on the dialect. However, the letter itself is still usually uttered with f, is a phoneme only heard in the Tyri, Barwari and Chaldean dialects. In most of the other Assyrian varieties it merges with p, theta, and th, are strictly used in the Tyri, Barwari and Chaldean dialects, which respectively merge with t and d in Standard Assyrian and other Assyrian dialects. In the Urmian dialect, with has a widespread allophone, v. In some Urmian and Jilu speakers, q may be uttered as k. In the Urmian and some Tyri dialects, is pronounced as d. K may be pronounced with t. In Urmian and Nochia speakers, is a marginal phoneme that occurs in some words, albeit only for some speakers. For others, it is realized the same as x. In some Tyri and Chaldean dialects, r may be realized as vowels. Vowel phonemes of Assyrian Neo-Aramaic are as follows. As uttered in words like Nasha and Nara, which is normally central, a is usually front, a in the Urmian and Nochia dialects. For some Urmian speakers, a may be used instead. In some Jilu speakers, this vowel is mostly fronted and raised to. In the Tyri and Barwari dialects, it is usually more back. A long vowel, as heard in Raba, may also be realized as, depending on the speaker. It is more rounded and higher in the Urmian dialect, where it is realized as. Heard in Beta is generally diphthongized to e in the Urmian dialect. I, as heard in Keeper, may be realized as, in the Tyri, Barwari, Chaldean and Baz dialects. E, uttered in words like Didwa, is mostly realized as, in the Tyri and Barwari dialects. U, as in Gura, may be realized as, in the Tyri, Baz, Chaldean and Barwari dialects. The Urmian dialect may diphthongize it to ui. O, as in Torah, may be diphthongized to or in the Tyri, Barwari, Chaldean and Jilu dialects. Two basic diphthongs exist, namely e and or. For some words, many dialects have converted them to e and o respectively. Phonetics of Iraqi coin, like the majority of the Assyrian dialects, realizes, with those w instead of v. Iraqi coin generally realizes the fricatives, theta, th, in words like Mata and Arkada, as stops, t, d. Predominantly, q, in words like Kalamaf doesn't merge with k. The diphthongs I and o in words like Kata and Torah are realized as long e and o, respectively. The e diphthong in Beta is realized as the ui diphthong in Zuizer is realized as u. T in verbs like chiakla is realized as j. Grammar and vocabulary. Most Assyrian Neo-Aramaic nouns are built from triliteral roots. Nouns carry grammatical gender, they can be either singular or plural in number and can exist in one of 3 grammatical states. These states should not be confused with grammatical cases in other languages. Adjectives always agree in gender and number with the nouns they modify. Adjectives are in the absolute state if they're predicative, but agree with the state of their noun if attributive. Most Syriac verbs are built on triliteral roots as well. Finite verbs carry person, grammatical gender and number, as well as tense and conjugation. The non-finite verb forms are the infinitive and the active and passive participles. The emphatic state became the ordinary form of the noun, and the absolute and construct states were relegated to certain stock phrases. The present tense is usually marked with the participle followed by the subject pronoun. However, such pronouns are usually omitted in the case of the third person. This use of the participle to mark the present tense is the most common of a number of compound tenses that can be used to express varying senses of tense and aspect. Loanwords. Unlike other Neo-Aramaic languages, Assyrian Neo-Aramaic has an extensive number of Iranian loanwords. This is due to its close geographical proximity to those languages. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic would be one of the few languages where most of the loanwords come from a different language family. Arabic loanwords are also present to some extent. Turkish loanwords are mostly Turkified words that are of Arabic origin. To note, some of the loanwords are revised, and therefore would sound somewhat different to the original word. Some loanwords may also have a slightly different meaning from the original language. Persian loanwords: bush, changle, dade, erzan, ham, hitch, master, mees, panjara, ranga, razi, sabab, zamat. Kurdish loanwords: chapla, dormana, hawa, hiwi, jewel, jawanka, kisset, quanya, razel. Arabic loanwords: asgar, donya, hazia, Turkified, kisa, kita, rahat, Turkified, sadra, sak, tamiz, Turkified. Dialects. Sil-Ethnologue distinguishes 5 dialect groups: Urmian, Northern, Central, Western, and Sapna, each with subdialects. Mutual intelligibility between the Assyrian dialects is as high as 80% to 90%. The Urmia dialect has become the prestige dialect of Assyrian Neo-Aramaic after 1836, when that dialect was chosen by Justin Perkins, an American Presbyterian missionary, for the creation of a standard literary dialect of Assyrian. A second standard dialect derived from General Urmian known as Iraqi Koine, developed in the 20th century. In 1852, Perkins' a translation of the Bible into General Urmian was published by the American Bible Society with a parallel text of the classical Syriac, Peshitta. Grouping. Urmian group: Urmia, Sopurgan Soldus Salmus. Hakkari group: Nochi Yajilagawa Dizabazokanus. Hakkari group: Tyri. Dialects within this group, and especially the Western group, share features with both the Chaldean Neo-Aramaic dialects in northern Iraq and Urmian, Upper Barwari Tk Humatal Luan, Nineveh Plains, Lower Barwari Chaldean Neo-Aramaic Tel Keper al-Koshbat Naya Teskopazaku. Iraqi Koine, also known as refined Urmian, is a compromise between the thicker rural accents of Hakkari and Nineveh Plains and the prestigious dialect in Urmia. Iraqi Koine does not really constitute a new dialect, but an incomplete merger of dialects. Koine is more analogous to Urmian in terms of manner of articulation, place of articulation and its consonant cluster formations. During the First World War, many Assyrians living in Ottoman Turkey were forced from their homes, and many of their descendants now live in Iraq. The relocation has led to the creation of this dialect. Iraqi Koine was developed in the urban areas of Iraq, which became the meccas for the rural Assyrian population. By the end of the 1950s, vast number of Assyrians started to speak Iraqi Koine. Today, Iraqi Koine is the predominant use of communication between the majority of the Assyrians, and it is also used as the standard dialect in music and formal speech. To note, the emergence of the Koine didn't mean that the rest of the spoken dialects vanished. The Assyrian dialects were still active because some Assyrians remained in the rural areas, and the fact that the first-generation speakers who relocated in urban areas still maintained their native dialects. Elements of original Assyrian dialects can still be observed in Iraqi coin, especially in that of older speakers. Dialect continuum. Assyrian Neo-Aramaic has a rather slightly defined dialect continuum, starting from the Assyrian tribes in northern Iraq and ending in western Iran. The dialects in northern Iraq, such as those of Al-Kosh and Batnaya, would be minimally unintelligible to those in western Iran. The dialects in northern Iraq have a distinct phonetic system and, as such, would be considered part of Chaldean Neo-Aramaic. Nearing the Iraqi-Turkey border, the Bahawarian Tyri dialects are more traditionally Assyrian, and would sound like those in the Hakkari province in Turkey. Furthermore, the Bahawarian Tyri dialects are transitional, acquiring both Assyrian and Chaldean phonetic features. In Hakkari, going east, the Gawa, Jillo and Nochia dialects would respectively begin to sound slightly distinct. The Tyri, Bahawar dialects are more like the prestigious Urmian dialect in Urmia, western Azerbaijan. The Urmian dialect, alongside Iraqi coin, are considered to be standard Assyrian, though Iraqi coin is more widespread and had thus become the more common standard dialect. Sample phrases.